Oh, that's why it's not even. We can turn this thing on.
That's how you did.
I believe that you were the first one. Okay, that's fine.
One of us was louder now.
That's fine. There's people online. Welcome, people online. We've been talking this whole time. Okay, I'm not going to start over. We're going to keep going from the middle. The people of Wisconsin need to rapidly change this state's outdated energy policy and portfolio in order to address the climate crisis. We might disagree on the path and on the means, but we have the same destination in mind. But right now, we are barely moving. And then 3, the things to agree on for those who are online and didn't hear what I'm talking about. Number 3, artificial intelligence and data centers are already greatly increasing energy demand, convincing Wisconsin's utilities to invest in even more fossil fuel energy production, pipelines, et cetera, in order to meet those demands. Regardless of our individual or organizational views on AI or data centers, or on the necessity of building more fossil fuel infrastructure in this moment, it's certain that expanding our energy usage will make the shared goal of 100% clean energy economy much harder to achieve.
In conclusion, transitioning to 100% clean energy economy as quickly as possible is the shared understanding and purpose in which we have convened Energy University. This transition also gives us a unique opportunity to create dignified, well-compensated union jobs. But that's not guaranteed without decisive legislative action and a strong partnership with now and future energy workers. We're honored to host panelists with a range of expertise and viewpoints, and we have a range of viewpoints represented in the audience too. At times, different panelists and participants of Energy University may not all agree on the best way to achieve fully 100% clean energy economy, but guess what? That's totally okay. We need productive, respectful conflict to unstick the status quo, but we're confident in time that we'll all agree on the same basic path forward. We can't take too much time because we've already waited too long.
We hope that Energy University kickstarts more conversations about the barriers and opportunities to meet our energy goals, ensuring everyone benefits fairly from the economic and environmental changes, all while protecting the state, the planet we call home. It is the only one we have and may be the only one we'll ever have. Please note that our program will end today at noon out of respect for the kickoff to Hispanic Heritage Month.
Also, if you have any questions, please submit them on a green slip from the registration table. We have staff who can provide additional slips, and they'll be collected and get them to the moderator for our Q&A session.
So for our Energy University Session 2, thank you to everyone who was here for Session 1. For Session 2, our featured speaker and moderator is Dr. Greg Nemet. Greg Nemet is a professor at the University of Wisconsin's Madison Follette School of Public Affairs, where he teaches courses in energy systems analysis, policy analysis, and in international environmental policy. He leads research projects on energy systems, technological innovation, and climate policy. In 2017, he was named an Andrew Carnegie Fellow. In 2019, he was awarded the inaugural World Citizen Prize in Environmental Performance by APPAM. And in 2023, he was a lead author for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's 6th Assessment Report. And he's behind me making bunny ears on me and Darren.
We also are fortunate to have the following distinguished panelists. Dr. Ross Astoria is a professor at the University of Wisconsin Parkside in the Political Science and Law Department. Dr. Astoria teaches courses in public law, public policy, and political philosophy, including constitutional law, as well as introduction to law, political theory, and environmental and global warming policy. Dr. Astoria's research interest areas include global warming policy and governance, and he has published on international trade law, utility law, New York's reforming the energy vision, and the California's cap and trade program. Tom Content is the executive director of the Citizens Utility Board and has been in this role since 2017. Before this, he worked for more than 30 years as a journalist, reporting on utilities, energy, and sustainable businesses. His reporting on energy and climate change won the National Press Stokes Award for energy writing in 2007, and he is also a constituent of the talented and tenacious
Thank you.
District.
Lastly, we have Dr.
Some of us are haters.
It's not on the script. Lastly, we have Dr. Beth White, MD, in a rural family medicine physician who serves patients in Vernon, Richland, Crawford, Grant, and Iowa counties. She is board certified in family medicine and graduated from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. In addition to her clinical practice, she holds a role as UW clinical adjunct faculty and actively volunteers within the public health projects. So thank you to each of our panelists. Can we give them all a round of applause? And then I'll kick it over to Professor Gregory Nemet for presenting and moderating our first session. Great. Should we move out of the... We're going to get...
All right. Well, thank you, Representative Madison, Senator Larson, for initiating this series. It's a fantastic set of panelists today. I'll kick off with some overview remarks and then turn it over to Ross, Tom, and Beth with some more specifics on impacts and opportunities for our state. Then after our remarks, we'll have time for questions, so please use the slips of paper for those. And just to remind you, as they said, we're on a strict timeline to close by noon to give time for folks to get to the Hispanic Heritage Month kickoff, which is open to the public. So I work on clean energy and climate change. I teach at the Follette School of Public Affairs at UW, and I serve as a coordinating lead author for the UN Climate Panel, the IPCC. And through all of that work, my mantra is really simple, is that the climate problem is getting worse, but the solutions are getting better. And no solution has gotten better more quickly than solar power. And so I'm going to start in talking a bit about that as an entree to what we'll talk about as well. So let me slip to the next slide and show, oh yeah, I wasn't sure where the slide, okay. Oh, you got it there, okay, great. So one of the, I guess I'll just summarize, is one of the underappreciated aspects of solar is how quickly it's gotten cheap. And to understand how that's happened, I would say, in short, the U.S. created the technology, Germany built a market, and China made it cheap. And that if we continue the drivers of change that's happened already, that we're going to see a lot more solar. And in fact, have solar go from where it is now, the edge of the system, kind of on the margins, interesting, appealing, but not at the core, to becoming the core. And we can observe what's happening in places like China, like South Australia, and in places where incomes are really low and affordability is super high, which is in the global South countries. And their solar is growing faster than it is in the global North. So there's no issue here that solar is too expensive. What the issue is that we have an opportunity. Wisconsin needs to take the opportunity to catch up with where things are going. So here's the opportunity. This is my class on energy systems that I love to teach, so it's suitable for Energy University. We talk about energy transitions, going from one carrier to another. And if we look in the past, that's taken 60 or 70 years to go from a wood-based economy to coal to oil to now gas. Where solar is going is to become bigger than oil and gas have ever been in a relatively short amount of time. If growth happens as it has been happening, it'll go on the first trajectory, that steepest one you see there. If it slows to half the speed it's been doing, it's on the second line where it still gets above gas in the 2040s. And if it goes to more linear growth, then we get to gas a little bit later. And it would take a lot of people intentionally around the world stopping solar to get to that low trajectory right there. So there's a lot of different ways it could go, but the potential for it going to the core seems most likely right now. The outlook is that the driving forces continue to fuel adoption and cost reductions, that solar becomes the biggest energy source, and its impact goes well beyond just substituting for fossil fuels. It creates new uses in new places. Cheap solar electricity stimulates this and where it can be taken advantage of, and I really think we're in for a solar-centric energy system as a result. What's new? So this is in the last 6 years since I wrote the first edition of the book. Solar keeps improving and changing. So we have 4 times as much adoption. Costs have come down by 75%. It's more concentrated. Production of solar panels is more and more in China. That's the 85%. Faster adoption in the global south. We can see grid integration. So that's making electricity grids where you have a lot of solar. And it works well. It's affordable. We have examples of that. And I'll talk a little bit about how we might do that. That autarky, diversifying production, so wanting to be self-sufficient on energy, solar fits into that very strongly. We don't have access to fossil fuels in our state. There's a lot of countries that don't have fossil fuels. Solar becomes a really important value for independence and self-sufficiency in those situations like in our state. Industrial policies, so government playing a role here. And then energy prosumers, people that both produce and consume electricity by having solar on their house. That's becoming a bigger part of the system. So that's what's new in the last several years. If we look at the long-term trajectory, solar's down by a factor of 10,000. So if today and you had solar on your house at cheap rates, you could make electricity or have an energy bill on the order of $30 or $40 per month, whereas back in the 50s that would have been $300,000 a month. So the trajectory of cost reductions has been steep and continues. We've seen this energy transition that's now in full swing. And in the past, these are counts of the word energy in publications and newspapers. And in the past, it was only when there was a crisis that happened, like in the 70s we had that. And then attention would go away from energy after that. What's happened in the last 20 years looks much more consistent. We do have crises. We had a gasoline price spike in 2008. You can see that with the rise of China. And we had a spike in 2022 with the invasion of Ukraine. But we also have this general trend to concern about energy. And I think that also fuels public interest and sentiment in actually changing to an energy system that's cheap, that's clean, and reliable. If you look at where investment is happening, 10 years ago, we had about as much investment in clean energy as we had in fossil. And now fossil, coal, oil, and gas, is only half that of clean energy, and it's increasing. So we're doing about $2 trillion worldwide in investment in renewables, electric vehicles, electrification, grids, compared to coal, oil, and gas. And it's really showing that the future, where investors are betting, is on the clean, and the fossil energy of the past is clinging on, and there's less investment than there used to be, and much less investment than clean. You can see it happening in small ways around the world. In Germany, we had a million solar balconies installed in just a couple of years because there was a law passed that said you can install up to 3 solar panels in your apartment on your balcony. You don't need permits. You don't need special equipment. You can just buy a kit and plug those panels directly into your AC outlet and offset some of your electricity production and costs. And that's been super popular. It's only starting to take off in the U.S. But it's a real opportunity, and it shows people's willingness to want to be part of this transition as well when they're enabled by policies that are supportive. Here's just a short picture of how solar got cheap and all the different entities involved in it. It's a long story, but the U.S. played a role. And in short, I say that the U.S. created the technology, Germany created a market, and China made it cheap. And now it's time for the U.S. to get back in that game and take advantage of the opportunities now that solar is so much cheaper than it used to be. So this is where I end up, is that solar really could become bigger than oil and gas ever came. And in fact, more than that, it's likely. It seems like the most likely outcome. And these are the reasons for it. Cost reductions continue, so we're not hitting a dead end. We're not hitting a flat part on the learning curve. There's ways to make solar thinner and more efficient and use different materials for it, so it keeps getting cheaper. Complementary technologies, so other technologies like batteries, are also getting cheaper so that you can run solar not just when it's sunny, but 4 hours later when we have a lot of demand for electricity. Grid integration, so people do complain that with solar that there's night, there's winter, there's the northern latitudes that we have here, there's clouds. All of those are real, but they're solutions. And if we do solar in a system that has energy storage, that has transmission, that has other renewables like wind, that has demand that's responsive. So yesterday, MG&E turned down my thermostat so the AC wouldn't go on because there was strong demand. I didn't have to play a role. I get some credit for that. We could be doing that on a much bigger scale. Digitalization, so having information moving around the system, enables all of this to happen. And then some firm clean generation, so clean technology, potentially nuclear, potentially fossil that captures the CO2, can play a role. Maybe it's the last 10%, but can be helpful as well. But all of this takes planning and takes investment, and that's required. It's not cost prohibitive. A review says it's something like 30% to the cost of solar to do all these things, so we should be doing this as well. New uses and new users, strong social license. Solar's popular. People like it. They're not afraid of it. There's generally appreciation of it. There are concerns in communities about large solar facilities being installed by companies from out of state, and so those need to be addressed, and there need to be clear community benefits for solar, but that's also something that can be addressed. Number 6 is there's more and more demand for electricity. So we're talking about transportation that used to be only driven by fossil fuels, and now we're talking about using batteries and electric vehicles, so we need electricity for transportation. We need electricity for heat pumps for heating our homes as well, electricity for data centers that are growing as well. So this demand for electrification is a bigger market that solar can now address. And this investment shift from dirty to clean is really happening. And that's large investors and banks and pension funds putting their money where they think the future is going, and that helps solar as well. So, yeah, I really think we're on this transition to a new solar-centric economy with new applications, new users, and moving the economy to where solar can really play a role. There are barriers, and maybe I'll just mention these because we need to take these seriously too. One is finance in the global south, but also in finance in Wisconsin, that's important. Land use in siting and permitting, that's been a real issue for solar in our state. There's a lot more projects that want to go forward than are actually being built right now, and that's something that we have to somehow work out and figure out. System integration, I talked about that. Access, regulation, and rates, those are absolutely crucial. We have an expert on that here that you'll hear from in just a few minutes, but really crucial. Recycling and materials, not a crucial problem now, but at some point we'll have a lot of solar panels that need to be reused. And then this global aspect that I talked about. And so it does seem like we understand that and that solar keeps growing. So just to finish on the policy part, now's the time. Now's the time to prepare and enable a solar-centric energy future. I think we need finance for adoption, especially managing the cost of due diligence on small loans. That's going to help communities, rural communities, individuals, households make the investment to power themselves. Siting and permitting being streamlined and more stringent, that's helpful. Community engagement, absolutely crucial. Grid integration, I talked about that. Not just solar, but all the other things we need with it. And then valuing what we're having this session for, valuing the benefits of health, of kids not going to the hospital with asthma, of dealing with our future with a changing climate. And we need to somehow value those as well. So I'll stop there and turn it over to our next panelist, I think it is Ross, but thanks for your attention and look forward to your questions later on as well.
Push. There we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Ross Astoria. I'm a professor at the University of Wisconsin Parkside. In addition to all those other things I did, I've also just recently published a book called How to Decarbonize. It uses social theory to look at different policy avenues. As I was thinking about what I might do here in a few minutes, I decided I would do a little briefing introduction to what's called the capital expenditure bias, or the CapEx bias, which is a very particular feature of the utility system across the United States. And in particular, every state that has tried to decarbonize and put more solar on the grid has had to tangle with and confront the CapEx bias in some way or another. So I want to set that out for us here at a kind of high level. The CapEx bias, first thing I want you to know about it is it's an artifact of the regulatory system. So in the late 1870s, early 1880s, states like Wisconsin started passing laws that established railroad commissions. Those commissions started placing rates on what railroads could charge their customers. The clever lawyers for the railroad companies brought a constitutional suit. They said that those railroad rates set by the commissions were an unconstitutional taking of property. The Supreme Court in 1890, which was larded up with lawyers from the railroad system, agreed with the railroad companies. They said any rate makings by states that undermined what they called the fair value of the railroad system was an unconstitutional taking of property. That principle from the railroad system was built into the utility regulatory system, first by John Commons, who was a professor at UW-Madison, wrote the first utility bill in 1907. So we are now tangling in 2025 with a 130-year-old principle that says regulatory rate making is a taking of property, or potentially could be. The way that gets worked out in the modern era is when a utility wants to build something, they make a request to the Public Service Commission for what's called, sometimes it's a certificate of prudence or certificate of convenience and necessity. Once that the Public Service Commission approves that building, then the utility can both build the facility and charge rates for it. The formula that Public Service Commissions use is, I think, up there right now. This is my first slide. In schematic here. So on the left, you have revenue requirement of the utility equals the depreciated prudent capital expenditures of the utility times a rate of return plus operating expenses. For our purposes right now, I want you to notice that the utility's profit is in that term rate of return. So this means if a utility wants to be continually making profit and revenue, they have to be continually investing in capital expenditures, not operating expenditures. And that's why utilities are constantly trying to build things. Now this has 3 results for the clean energy transition that I want to note here. So first, utilities are incentivized to invest in large centralized generating plant, transmission, and substations. This is mostly hydrocarbon infrastructure, but not all. All right, so tangling with the CapEx bias means figuring out that incentive structure. The second one, I think the next slide, please. When you or I, as customers, invest in energy efficiency or reduction, we cut into the utility's revenue stream, right? So we kind of goof up that formula, which means utilities need an incentive to invest in energy efficiency kind of outside the CapEx bias. The third one, when you and I invest in rooftop solar, which is quote-unquote distributed energy, but even notice here the terminology of distributed is from the point of view of the utility. For those of us who might have solar on our roofs don't seem distributed, right? So we are taking the utility's point of view here. But when we do that, we also cut into the utility's revenue stream because we purchase less of their power. But then we also potentially displace some of the utility's future capital expenditures, right? So the utilities have no incentive to support rooftop solar. So that needs to be overcome. And then I think on the next slide, we've got some solutions. Okay, so one thing I've tried to do is think about what states in confronting the CapEx bias have tried to do to work with the CapEx bias and support the transition. So states pass clean energy standards. These are basically schedules for utilities to change out from fossil fuel infrastructure to clean energy infrastructure. States have used energy efficiency portfolio standards. These are a way for utilities to earn some rate of return on investments in energy reduction and energy efficiency. They have developed a method for valuing the contributions of distributed energy resources on the grid. That might be distributed solar, it might be batteries. Those are VDERs, for instance. They have found ways to expedite the connection of non-utility resources to the grid. Those might be resources owned by municipalities, by communities who have a solar garden. But one thing that happens there is the utilities under this system, rather than getting paid for generating and selling electrical power, they get paid for coordinating the diverse contributions of different types of entities to the grid. And then states have created or repurposed existing public financing systems towards decarbonization and, in particular, low-income projects. This is what we might call a green bank. So with these large hydrocarbon facilities, one thing that happens is there's well-channelized systems of finance, so utilities know how to use those, but they do not know, and banks do not know, how to fund a solar garden or how to fund distributed energy on our roofs. Okay, I will take questions at the end, and I'll be sticking around afterwards if anyone wants to talk. Thank you.
Great. Our next speaker is Tom Content.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tom Content. I'm Executive Director of the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin. So we are the customer advocate for the residential and small business customers of Wisconsin. So we advocate at the Public Service Commission. That's our primary role. We also have an education mission, and we're trying to so that we can help people save on their bills through our education. We have webinars, including one that starts in an hour, and another one on October 1st, and that you can find the recordings of on our YouTube channel. So we're there to make sure there's balance between the regulated system. Trying to see if the slide's showing up. I don't. You see them? Okay. So we're there. We were founded in 1979 as the first citizens utility board in the country. So the last time there was this much media attention about energy prices, as Dr. Nemet was saying, was when CUB got founded. And so we operate as the consumer advocate designated under state law, but we operate as a nonprofit. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit. So we have members who are progressives who want the energy transition to go faster. We have members who just want lower bills. We have members who care about the public interest. And then we have members who are libertarian who are as skeptical of monopoly utilities as they are of big government. So we kind of go across the spectrum, and that kind of defines how we try to work for everybody in Wisconsin. And as it relates to the energy transition, the challenges that we see are affordability. And we're loading in, so that's going to help me know where we are. So go forward a few slides. Did that. Okay, I'm just going we'll just keep going. So the challenge is, so what we have coming at us is Wisconsin has been able, through CUB and our advocacy at the Public Service Commission, we've been able to save, as the consumer advocate, over $1.3 billion over the last 10 years. That may not feel like that because your bills have gone up. In fact, those savings are in the context of much, much higher increases. Two utilities last year that came in for increases sought increases in the range of $800 million. And so the Commission, with our help and our advocacy, the Commission landed at a lower number. They brought down the size of the profits, and that was a good step, but still one with a lot of cost. So we have three areas of primary focus. That's the rate cases where utilities come in at basically every other years to set their rates. Then there are those certificates of need for new power plants and new power lines. We're seeing a big surge in applications as we speak. And as Professor Astoria mentioned, that's where the build cycle is reinforcing, because this is how the power companies make money. And so The challenge is that we have the most, at CUB we have the most impact in the rate cases, but there are so many other cases, and with a staff of 6, it keeps us hopping. The consumer protection cases, we have upcoming cases and current cases that are focusing on affordability related to each of the utilities. And then there are upcoming cases examining cost overruns. So solar is cost effective, but we've seen a lot of cost overruns with those projects. We've seen cost overruns with transmission lines. And so when a project goes over budget, how much of that should fall back on Joe homeowner or Jane renter or Jose small business? That's the question that will be answered in that case that's coming up. And then there are concerns about divvying up the pie between small and large customers, and there's a future case involved in that too. Next slide, please. One of the areas, let's see, I talked about the $1 billion in savings. You can move forward to the next slide. That's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll figure this out. The other thing, in the context of what's happened in the last couple of years, is the higher profits the rate cases have led to energy bills that have outpaced inflation. So energy bills that are outpacing inflation is a real concern across the country and here, and that for We Energies and WPS customers in particular, the combined effect of 2 rate cases is a 20 to 30% increase for the average customer's residential bill over 4 years. And so that's something where we're still in the fight, but when you look at how consumer advocacy is done around the country, Wisconsin is very unique. There's Wisconsin, Oregon, and Louisiana are the only states where a nonprofit alone is the designated customer advocate. And we happen to be surrounded by multiple states that have both a nonprofit and 1, sometimes 2 state government agencies that are out there either representing customers or the public interest. And so that's my little sales pitch for our nonprofit. And what I want to talk about, and there is a slide on this, but on the cost of solar, there's a study that comes out every year that designates the levelized cost of all energy technologies, and solar and wind are, even without the tax credits, are cost competitive. And at the least expensive end of the spectrum. And so that's an important thing that we wanted to say. Now, going forward, we still have concerns about the solar was cost effective at price X, but when it becomes price X plus X percent, double-digit percentages, that's where we have concerns. That's great. Thank you. We go to the next slide. So data centers. We've heard about those, right? Okay, next slide. What does this mean? So the challenge we have today is that the energy landscape is changing so dramatically right in front of our eyes. We currently have 5 to 6 announced projects in Wisconsin that are across the state, from Racine County to Port Washington, from Beaver Dam to Dane County, and now Menominee in western Wisconsin. The utilities and the tech companies are all saying the right things. The tech companies are going to pay their fair share. Our job as CUB, as the consumer advocate and watchdog, is to say, oh, okay, let's make sure. And so, next slide, please. One of the questions we have is, how much of this is real? We know that AI transition is happening, but we also know that tech companies are shopping around. It means nothing to a tech company to have multiple proposed projects cited in different states, because they're shopping for the best deal for them. And so even a utility executive this spring said, we don't know what is real and what's going to locate itself in another part of the country. And so that's where we came in with questions earlier this year regarding the WEC proposed natural gas plants. We thought maybe the Microsoft load, how big was that load going to be? We ended up advocating a compromise plan with some natural gas paired with renewable energy. But I think the scale of these things is so dramatic that a data center is an entire city. The two projects in the eastern part of the state would double the energy use of the utility. So it's a ton of energy, and that's where having the playing field in a way that doesn't just reward build becomes so important. Next slide, please. And so this is another slide that just from LBNL that talks about how much uncertainty there is, and that there are a lot of forecasts for we're going to have this many data centers or this much energy demand from data centers by 2030 or 2035. But how much of that is real and how much of it is double counting and triple counting? Next slide. So we want to see consumer protections, and we're in cases right now at the Public Service Commission with We Energies and Alliant to make sure that what they say is lived up to in the agreements, where if a tech company, if the AI business plans suddenly change, because we weren't talking about AI data centers 3 years ago, and now it's all we talk about. So if the business plans change again, are we protected? Are the consumers protected? Are the citizens protected from through exit fees and other protections? So there are a variety of protections that we want to make sure are in there, and so we'll be actively working on that, and we'll have information available about that on our website. Next slide, please. So what this affordability challenge and also this new demand challenge, it gets back to this balancing. So there's a couple areas where we need for balance. So the Public Service Commission, you heard about a bit in the prior session. It's in our view, it's the three most important people in Wisconsin who aren't that most people have never heard of in terms of their impact on our energy future, on what we pay, the pocketbook impact, and the footprint of that. And so the other thing that we're trying to balance, so we're trying to balance customers and shareholders. But we're also, and that's the job of the PSC, but as Professor Astoria mentioned, we need to balance supply and demand as well. And that's where we need better planning, so that energy efficiency and demand response have a seat at the table. And then you can go to the last slide, please. So one before that. So most states have a planning process which gives a state a more holistic view of the utility system. And so they approve an entire plan at once. And it's in these processes that energy efficiency, demand response, solar, wind, sometime nuclear down the road, they all get a fair hearing, and they all get weighed on an even playing field. I'll be happy to take questions at the end. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Tom. I'll turn it over to our final speaker, Dr. Beth White.
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Dr. Beth White. I practice in rural Wisconsin in the Driftless area. I come from rural roots. I'm going to share a little bit about myself, my perspective, and then a little bit about what I am hoping that you all, as people in power, that can affect the future of our state of Wisconsin can do. So I grew up in a rural family dairy farm in Rock County. As a first-generation college student, I was quickly brought up in a foreign place of academia. As a child, I thought we were rich. We were rich in our natural resources. We lived a good life. We took care of our land. We took care of our animals. And I watched my parents work hard, and I worked hard right next to them. I watched as my father would resuscitate calves if they wouldn't take their first breath after a difficult labor or calving. We, as an adult now and as a medical professional, I now see the depths of economic struggles that we faced, living below the poverty line, despite the fact that we felt rich at the time. How our mental and physical health were impacted was a real problem. The day that I watched all of our dairy cattle load on a trailer as we sold our family dairy farm That was the first day that I saw my father, who I otherwise knew as a strong, foundational person in our lives, cry. He cared about the animals that he took care of, he cared about our land, and he protected our natural resources around us. So I'm here today as a voice for rural Wisconsin communities and my patients. We can go on to the next slide, please. So I am wanting to bring out a perspective of rural populations as part of our solutions that we can rely upon. Next slide, please. As a U.S. Population-wise, we have, as a rural community, we represent 18% of our populace. Yet our emissions represent 36% of the U.S. emissions. Next slide, please. The Rural Climate Partnership published a report on the climate impact of rural America. You can see here how rural emissions are spread out among different sectors: electric power, agriculture, industry, transportation, and residential and community sectors. We have so many opportunities here. Next slide, please. We have solutions. We've already heard by experts around, global experts, local experts, and people who represent community and individual interests, that we have solutions. But our solutions are going to rely upon banding together across the rural-urban divide that exists. We're going to need land to build out our solutions. We already know that U.S. clean energy in general is located in rural areas. Over 90% of wind energy and over 60% rely upon rural landscapes. Next slide, please. Our opportunities here are vast, but we can't start experiencing our opportunities or the benefits of our opportunities until we build them out. So time is of the essence. Not only are there health benefits, there are benefits that can come back to invest into communities similar to the one that I grew up in. We can create jobs, we can protect our natural resources by investing in the people who care most about them, instead of investing into foreign investors that are currently buying up our land here. We can help our communities build a legacy so that we can protect our state and what is so dear to our state's economy and our state's legacy. Next slide, please. I want to spend most of my time, we're a little short on time, but I want to spend most of my time talking about health benefits. Our current energy system is over 75% dirty energy. That means our energy system is burning fuels that is poisoning each one of us. We are creating emissions on every second. We are putting air pollution into the air that is shared across our landscape. We have a medical alert that was published by Healthy Climate Wisconsin in 2020 that really outlines the depths of these negative impacts and then the opportunities that we have. By transitioning our energy grid to 100% clean energy, we have the opportunity to save nearly 2,000 premature deaths, so saving 2,000 lives in Wisconsin every single year. There are even more respiratory events, cardiac arrests, illnesses that are experienced by our mothers, by our children, that are leading to lost days of work and leading to unnecessary health costs. This translates to $21 billion of healthcare costs. See, my full-time job is taking care of patients, sitting one-on-one with patients in my clinic office in rural Wisconsin. People want to be healthy. People are tired of spending so much money and so much time sitting with me, despite the fact that I think they like me. They don't want to be there. They want to be continuing to work the land. The number of times that I sit and try to help people understand how they can protect themselves from the environment around them that is poisoning them and that is making them sick are countless. We sit and we cry together. We sit and we figure out which medications can they afford that month and which ones are going to be the ones that help keep them thriving, keep them out of the hospital. We talk about mental health, how the mental health impacts of a farmer who works tirelessly, who works harder than I work. I know because I grew up with one. How these farmers in these extreme weather events that are made more likely because of the choices that we are making at the highest level of power. These choices that we are making are leading to the stress and the losses that we are experiencing as a community. As we get 100-year rains more frequently, we create soil runoff, we're losing crops, we're polluting our water streams and sources. We heard how we only get one planet. We're here. We have an imperative as decision makers, as people in the seat of power, to be courageous and to be creative and to defend science, defend public health, and protect our communities. We have a responsibility. I took an oath. You've all taken an oath to protect the people that we serve. We serve the people, and we need to defend ourselves, really. Next slide. We've already heard by experts in the room how wind and solar energy are the most efficient forms of clean energy that we have access to right now. We are making a choice. Next slide, please. Wisconsin, we are behind. Our energy grid is powered only 25% by clean energy. This graph demonstrates how behind we are. The darker states are the ones who are further along than we are with solar and wind energy. We are trailing behind with less than 10% of our energy system utilizing the most efficient form of clean energy that we have currently. Next slide, please. What should we do? We need to rapidly transition our energy grid to clean energy so that we can mitigate the climate crisis. If we do this, we can enhance and invest into our local economy. We can defend science, public health in our communities. There are energy cooperatives that are doing this more than others. We commonly hear about people's concern about the health harms that an energy system can bring about, but the consensus shows that wind and solar are healthy. They are healthy, and our status quo is harmful to us. We know that we have community buy-in because we have seen it. In Westby, there is a community solar farm that has been created by the Vernon Electric Cooperative, and 1,000 panels sold out to individual consumers in 2 weeks because of how popular the interest was. If that doesn't tell us the story that people want this, I don't know what else does. But what we need from all of you is really to be courageous, to reach across the aisle, to work together as a rural and urban state so that we can really utilize the solutions that we have right in front of us. We need to institutionalize funding so that communities aren't left wondering if grant money will still be there when it comes time to pay the bills. We need to be able to create energy systems that work for communities instead of exempting communities from the benefits. We've heard about the depths of that. And we really need to stand on the foundation that our scientists and researchers have worked tirelessly to communicate and to make public and accessible to us all. Thank you so much for your time today.
We have a very short time before noon, but we'll try and get through these as quick as we can.
And for the questions that are not answered today, we will try and figure out ways to get answers to them.
Okay, so thank you so much for your questions. The first one I have here is probably for Tom and Ross. Why does Wisconsin's energy priority law not actually require new renewables to be built before fossil plants? Ross, do you want to take that one?
I think we have a challenge when it comes to the energy priorities law in terms of how it gets implemented. It's hard for energy efficiency and demand response to compete in a given project like a natural gas plant. Energy efficiency and demand response, which are the cleanest technologies and the highest priorities in Wisconsin, they have to be implemented over a longer period of time than one power plant. So I think in order to really make the energy priority laws fully complete, it gets back to having better planning as a state.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And just to get through as many as we can in just a couple minutes, maybe for Ross, how do we make sure our urban communities, our black and brown communities, aren't left out, for example, in Milwaukee, because We Energy isn't focused on moving towards renewable energies?
Yeah, so in the states who've confronted the CapEx bias, one of the things they've done is they've been able to put other non-fiscal values into how they evaluate projects. So it's possible to think about how a project that might otherwise not be the cheapest project in a particular place will eliminate a fossil fuel plant that is polluting a particular community. So there's ways to put that into the priority list.
Great. Thanks, Ross. And I think we have time for one more. I'll direct this to Beth. Beth, you talked about rural communities, and we have a question on how can legislators present today make it easier to increase solar energy adoption, maybe particularly in the rural communities around the state?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, number one, first we need to recognize that there's a whole lot of disinformation out there. There are people that are feeding lies and false solutions to communities to make them believe that solar energy is harmful to them, which is just not true. We know that there's a consensus among scientists and professionals that solar energy is safe and it can lead to benefits for land conservation as well. And so I think that first and foremost, we need to get into the communities. We need to rely upon the grassroots organizing groups that are already in communities to regain the trust of the rural communities.
Great. Thanks so much. And really great to hear all those perspectives of concern about rural communities, about urban communities, about rate making, but also about health benefits, which is a key thing we all care about. So thanks to the members for setting up this, and I'll turn it over to you to close this out.
Thank you again to our panelists. Can we give them a round of applause? And I think they might be able to stick around a little bit if you want to get their contact info, and we'll share that out if you signed up in the back. Thank you to each of you for taking the time and space to be here and to be able to learn a little bit more. And then the important part is not just to know what's going on. Knowing is half the battle, as G.I. Joe always says. Yep, that's right. But the action is what really matters and what we do after that. So let's go out there and do something. Thank you. We'll see you next week for the last session, and that one will be at noon.
You have been watching a production of Wisconsin Eye.